Hello everyone, it's Gigabeef here, and today we're going to run through a loadout for the RFB. I've harped on enough about this gun, and I still think it's one of the hero weapons of 12-12 so far for its cracking value and its ability to take down targets quickly with an assortment of ammo that scales well into the mid and late game. So let's run down the RFB's key points first. You can buy it from Skier 2, which is achieved at level 15 and 0.2 rep for 55k. If you need to up your skier cash spend, remember that you can buy rigs from the flea and sell them back to him like the Wartech Mark III, the Umka, Azimuth or Scout Sniper for a small loss if you can buy them at a decent price. The RFB has an accuracy of 1.48 MOA, which is pretty decent, and it has basic 20 random magazines available at Peacekeeper 2. Also at Peacekeeper 2, you can buy the M80 round. This is $2.38 per round, which you can tell if you try to buy 100, which is about 300 rubles each. Considering the RFB is semi-auto, this is very reasonable and is the reason why it used to sell out all the time at the start of the 12-12 wipe. One interesting point to note is there is a better mag on Mechanic 2, which is actually cheaper than the one from Peacekeeper. $27 for the basic mag is about 3,400 rubles versus 3,368 for the mechanic version. You get 3 extra ergo, but there are not that many on the global stock, so it does sell out and you have to be mindful of his timer to get some. The other ammo for the RFB is not accessible at an early stage. M80 is great because it has an over 90% chance to pen class 4 at full health, and it does great damage at 80 per shot. As a side note, with 17% chance to fragment, this does mean that around 1 in 6 shots will deal 120 damage instead, which is pretty cool. M62 Tracer is the next best round, available at Peacekeeper 3 after Spartor Part 6, which is really quite far along his questline, and M61, the ultimate endgame round, is only purchasable at Peacekeeper 4 after Wet Job 6. Interestingly, M61 is actually kind of more available in general though, because you can do a hideout craft for it at Workbench 3. It's pretty expensive though, as 6 red powders and 3 helixes is not cheap to only make 80 in 16 hours base time in the Workbench. The only reason why you'd use these other ammos really is to defeat better than class 4. M80 is only a 13% chance to pen through class 5, however with only 3 more pen, M62 is a bit underwhelming at 30% chance. It's only when you get to M61, with its insane pen of 64, that you two-shot every armor in the game nearly every time, which isn't really necessary at this point in the wipe. One of the best things about the RFB is that it's a bullpup, so it has good ergo to begin with. This means, however, that you can't fix the recoil. I have discussed in this video previously why this is the case and how this works in Tarkov's recoil system, but it's a double-edged sword because it means that you don't need to do much to the weapon to improve it. You can't change the barrel, you can't change the pistol grip, and the only thing you can really do is add a foregrip, a muzzle, and an optic. Given even the best in slot foregrip for recoil, the RK2 removes 4% and this only takes off 7 actual recoil points, it's kind of worthless to use anything other than a cheap grip for more ergo. For muzzles, you need to grab the RFB spacer first, and this then lets you attach the full variety of 308 muzzles. You don't have to put anything on it at all if you don't want to, it will work fine without, but we can reduce a little bit of recoil on the cheap using something loud, or go suppressed and basically double the price of the weapon, but this really helps if you're playing solo and trying to take out multiple enemies without getting located. Here is my table of 308 muzzles for this wipe. As you can see, there is a new best in slot compensator for recoil, which is actually even better than the blast mitigation 3-part muzzle that fits the existing Knight's armament suppressor. The RFB does take the BMD combo, but that's high level traders, so out of the scope of this video, and the top 3 standalones are a bit expensive for my taste. The Red Break is around 20k, the Lantac is really expensive, like 40k or something because it's a part of the BMD combo, and it being better on other weapons, and the Atlas is still 14% recoil reduction, so around 13,000 usually. The next best after these 3 is the Surefire Pro Comp. If it's around 10,000, it might be worth picking up for its 10% recoil reduction, which takes the weapon from 159 to 135, which helps a little bit. On suppressors, you kind of want the lowest ergo penalty you can, given the recoil bonuses aren't that important on the RFB. The Silencer Hybrid has the lowest, but it only reduces actual recoil by 9.5% and hits ergonomics by 17 because the mount doesn't do anything like a regular muzzle suppressor combo does. Watch out because it's pretty expensive on the flea, but it can be bartered for 4 sticks of RAM, which makes it much cheaper from Mechanic 2, and the mount can be bought from Peacekeeper 2. A nice suppressor is the Daniel's Defense, which is good because it's for 1 ergo less, but you get another 7.5% recoil reduction, which I think is probably worth it on balance. It's much cheaper on the flea than on the trader, so you should be able to get the suppressor for about 40k if the timing works out, but the problem is that you can't get the break cheaply until you get Mechanic 3. As an alternative middle ground on trader levels, you could get the old Knight's Armament Flash Hider from Peacekeeper 2 and the suppressor itself on Peacekeeper 3. This is not really ideal because A, the 24 ergo sucks as a negative, and B, because this suppressor combo with the new Knight's break is now best in slot, so the suppressor itself is really expensive, and $488 from Peacekeeper is basically the best price you're going to get, which is about 61k, but it's up to you. Personally, if you were going to go suppressed, I'd probably just make do with the hybrid until Mechanic 3 and not pay the extra cost. All that said, the recoil is kind of hard on the RFB, which means that you can lose sight of your target as the sight picture jumps around. There's not really much way around this, and it does limit your fire rate somewhat compared to more meta DMR type builds that run the same ammo. But it only takes a few body shots to take down almost anyone, so don't let that put you off. It's no meta M1A, but it's certainly a hell of a lot cheaper. One of the biggest downsides to the RFB is the lack of side rails to add lasers and flashlights. This means that you can struggle if caught off guard in CQB, sort of similarly to the Hunter in that regard. By the way, I do think the RFB is significantly better than the Hunter ever since durability was added to the game. The only way to get a laser at all on the RFB is using the Holosun Reflex, but I don't like this one really, and it doesn't get the point spread tightening bonus you get from other lasers either, so it's something that can be done, but I wouldn't really recommend it. I've always been a big fan of the Elcan, which is usually cost effective on the flea at about 30k, but I've really started to branch out in 1212s towards some other budget options like the TAC 30, where the 1x just feels like it has more field of view to me on the RFB. This could be bartered for 2 vodkas if it's getting expensive on the flea for some reason, which is handy. So overall, the build here is the RFB from Skier 2 at 55k, the Knight's Armament vertical foregrip from Peacekeeper 2 for 4,000 rubles, the 30mm scope mount from Jaeger 2 for 4k, the TAC 30 from the flea or Jaeger 2 in cash, or the 2x vodka for about 30,000, the Daniels Defense muzzle from Mechanic 3, and the suppressor from the flea for 9k and 40k, and M80s for 300 rounds each. 2x20 mags costs 12k, with the polymer 20 round mags from Mechanic 2 for 7k for a minimum of 2. This brings the build to 36 ergo and 130 recoil and approximately 160,000 rubles. Obviously, most of this cost comes from the suppressor. As I said, you can drop this if you want and make it 110k instead, or go for a cheap muzzle and make it 120k. For the rest of the loadout, you can mix and match a variety of kits that work with this weapon. Given it's typically a medium to longer range gun, a helmet is still optional in my opinion, and my old favourite the Ratnik just hasn't been saving me at all when wearing it this wipe, the same as the TC2000s and those kind of ones without ears. Often I use them when I have them lying around, but I kind of stopped buying them for budget runs. Maybe the ULAC is worth it at 75k with class 4 on the ears, but it seems a little bit of a stretch monetarily. Maybe give it a go and see what you think. For headsets, I've switched back over to the Razors, which is my preferred option for outdoor areas because of the reduced ambient noise for me, and I do think it's worth using your preferred headset over something cheap like the GSSH if it isn't your favourite choice, simply because you don't want to be snuck upon with this weapon. The MMAC rig barter is still really good on Ragman 2, it has thorax only protection, and given the lower likelihood of getting hit with flesh stuff like Magnum Buck if patrolling around in open areas, I think this is actually okay. But as people move up into class 5, the Korund or the Gazelle barter can also be considered if you have Ragman 3, which will save you from a shot or two of M80 which class 4 will not. With those class 5s, pair with any rig you like, even the bank robber will do if you want to min-max your loadout. You don't need a huge number of magazines, 3 feels nice but you can get away with 2 if you want to use it for Punisher with the Scav Vest for example. For meds, the car kit, army bandage and cat is the bare minimum, and at Therapist 3 you can start using hemostats instead to prevent more than one heavy bleed per raid without dipping into the secure container IFAK or AFAK. I've been trying out adrenaline recently instead of either propofol or morphine, which is kind of cool because it gives a mix of really fast health regen plus the painkiller effect. Morphine gives just painkiller and 2 seconds to apply, which is really quick and is the budget stim choice, and propofol is a painkiller too, but with 1 HP per second over 300 seconds, it's kind of nice to use when fixing limbs. Adrenaline is somewhere between a propofol and a green ETG stim with +4 per second but only for 15 seconds, so you get a quick 60 HP out of it, plus the painkiller which lasts 1 minute. But the big downside is because of the shorter time on the buffs, you get the after effects much faster than that of propofol or morphine too, and it's conceivable that you're still in the fight, which is less than ideal. Then take whatever grenades you want. I think you should take at least 1 so you can distract somebody if you get into a sticky situation, and whatever bag you fancy. A face cover is obligatory as usual for the avoidance of enemies spotting your large PMC face smiling out of a bush. So the loadout is pretty flexible and you can take whatever you think you need around this. For me, the low end version of the loadout looks like this. Razors for 28k, Balaclava for 3k, the MMAC rig barter for 50k, meds, the car kit, the army bandage, the cat tourniquet and the adrenaline for 26k, a grenade for 9k, a bag for 20k and the weapon at 110k. This comes out to 250k, and like I said in my previous build video, it sounds like a lot, but normally we don't add up literally everything, and you'll normally have a bag lying around, a grenade, whatever, so you don't need to spend exactly that amount of cash on the loadout. You usually have some of this together, but it's useful to remember exactly how much the loadout does actually cost when we bring it in. So onto the expensive version. This I'm going to keep using the Razors, upgrade our face cover to the Shamar for 4, use the Gazelle barter for 120k on Ragman 3, the Splav Tarzan barter for hunting matches which can be about 10k, the ULAC helmet for 75, for the meds it's exactly the same except upgrading the tourniquet to the hemostat for 4,000 rather than 2,000. Now I'm going to take 2 grenades for 18k, the same bag for 20 and the weapon for 170k, which includes 1 more mag and 20 more M80s in there, so we have 3 magazines and the suppressed version. So overall, this comes out to 470k, and I can feel your eyes watering already, but you don't have to take all of this stuff. It's just a potential if you want to run fully kitted. The biggest expenses here are the suppressor and the ULAC helmet, which is over 100k on their own, but it might be worth it to you to secure the rest of the loadout and avoid the regret when you get head ears using the 300k version where the extra piece of armor might have saved you. Usually you will get some of this stuff back in insurance too, although do note that the RFB is quite returns unfriendly because without the mag it nests down into one slot wide, so 4x1 without the suppressor, which is not really ideal. Finally, around what to take in the secure container, I wanted to mention one part that I didn't on the last build, and that is using the new injector case. This thing is totally bonkers and basically everybody should be using one. 16 slots for stims allows you to take enough injectors to fix really any situation. ETG for rapid heal, Propofol for long-term painkillers, Mule for overweight raids, Augustin for 3 bleeds at once, the list goes on. This is basically a mandatory take at the moment, and if you can afford to buy one, not only does it allow you to take a good selection of stims with you, but also to loot other stims that you find in raid easily into the secure container if you find them, and you keep them if you die. With this, in the alpha you can genuinely consider going ammo stack plus CMS because you can get all of your emergency healing from the container if you want. They're usually about 700 to 800k on the flea, and there is a barter for them, so you might be able to snag one a little bit cheaper, but I definitely think it's well worth taking if you can, because it's probably one of the most overpowered things that's been added to the game for a while. So as usual, if you learned something, please consider dropping a like and a comment. To see when I'm streaming, you can follow me on Twitter and Twitch, and with all that said, I'll see you next time, and as always, have fun in your raids.